Israel. There are protests in Israel, but that doesn't seem to make any difference. Netanyahu will continue to do what he's doing. Is it that the Iran is not going to officially retaliate, but keep on supporting different groups to attack and harassing Israel? Is that what we can see what's going on now?
I think the Iranians are playing a very long game, because I think that when the assassination of Hania took place in Tehran, I think that made them finally understand that they're dealing with a prime minister and a government that ultimately is seeking war with them, and that their priority is not so much now just to retaliate to that one event, but to
Hmm.
prepare for war. And I think this is what Iran is doing, actually. As for the protests in Israel, what they point to, in my opinion, is this sharp division that now exists within Israeli society. There is the Israelis who are, socially liberal, secular, left of center in many cases, who want to lead westernized, Western style lives, who would be willing to come to compromises with with their Arab neighbors, with the Palestinians even. And then there is the other section of Israeli society, which is very strong and very numerous, and they're the ones who are currently backing Netanyahu, who believe in a much, much more nationalistic, I don't really like to say nationalistic, a more ideological, uh, uh, um, religious, hardline Israel, setting up Israel and the state of Israel, as they call it, ultimately reestablishing all of the features of the temple cult in Jerusalem, and basically um, either subordinating the Arabs to a secondary position or even expelling them. And I think this side of Israeli society not only backs Netanyahu, but is becoming stronger over time. And I think because of this, he feels that he can simply ignore these protests because the people who are protesting are not the people that he depends on in order to remain in power.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's not just the Netanyahu himself. There's force within Israel that believe they should continue what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the problem. Okay. Before you go, now last time we talked about this Wukong game that became tremendously popular, and one of the things in the game is this headless statue that I told you that the Chinese media believe interpret that as to signal to the British Museum that the head you cut out all the heads of all the statues, and but you said that the British Museum will not get the message. I agree with you. Guess what? Guess what? So apparently the Chinese netizens, they have been very busy putting all the comments in the British Museum's website to telling the British Museum that this is the message, please return our artifacts and all those head and etc. And they also did that with the British embassy's website in China. So they flooded all these comments. Now, in the beginning, the British Museum actually responded as saying, "Well, we are doing everything according to international standard, etc. Procedure, this and that." But there was so much, so they in the end closed all the comments. So, so the British Museum did get a message. Okay, and there in China, they're saying that the Great Firewall that's set up by the Chinese government is eventually going to what they're doing now is to protect the West from the Chinese netizens. What's your take on that?
I think that's a very good point, actually, because that's exactly where we're heading. I mean, there is so much policing of social media in the West now that it's becoming. It's actually much. We discussed this in our last program. I mean, the Great Firewall of China is. It's a little bit of a myth, actually, in my opinion, because it gives the impression to people, it's all very censored, very controlled. If you step out of line, the police come round, and it isn't like that. It
Yeah.
really isn't. I mean, I've spoken, and not just to yourself, but to others in China, including Westerners in China. And I've been to China myself. I've spoken with Chinese people. You find them very open, very outspoken. They have their views. They say things about China that can be very critical about
Mhm.
aspects of life in China, though I should say I have not yet met a single person from China who was not very proud of his or her country and very patriotic as well. So that's which is unusual. I mean, it's very different from Russians. You find Russians who absolutely hate their country by comparison. It's refreshing to find that Chinese are not like that. No Chinese I've met is like this. But anyway, in the West, it's becoming otherwise. And I mean, obviously, we're having firewalls starting to be built. We have a major campaign in the media here about the importance of having firewalls. Robert Reich, who was Bill Clinton's Labor Secretary, is publishing articles saying that the First Amendment is out of control and we need to have as tight restrictions as we can. And I'm afraid there's a sinister development because in Britain, they're now starting to arrest people. I mean, they arrested a man called Richard Medhurst, whom I
Yeah.
know, not very well, but a little. Actually, I was speaking to him on Monday, but they took him off a plane because they said that some of the things that he was saying were, out of bounds and shouldn't be allowed. And they've arrested and searched the house of another journalist. They're doing all sorts of things. And of course, the most interesting fact about all of these events is that the British media doesn't say anything about them.
Mhm.
You
Mhm.
wouldn't know that they had happened because the Guardian, the Telegraph, the BBC, all of those don't report it. So
Well, it's
that's
hard.
that's the real firewall. That's the firewall that's coming. And of course, if they're protecting themselves from the netizens, well, I think that's good for the netizens. By the way, just to say, nothing will embarrass the British more than something like that. The idea, the perception that the Chinese are more outspoken, more active, more willing to raise protests, to remind the British also of their imperial and colonial legacy, which is nothing something that the British always want to run away from.
Mhm.
They don't want to talk about it. At least they do want to talk about it. It's always about the civilizing mission,
Um,
the way they created, the united the world economy and the railways they built and all of that. Anyway, all of this is putting them on the back foot, and I will enjoy it.
I just feel like the netizens are constantly, impress me by their initiatives, right? They would just flood to the British Museum website. I even didn't think
Mm,
about it, but they apparently did. They're very savvy. The netizens are very savvy. I
yeah.
find that's very interesting. And so now the British Museum knows that.
I look forward to reading the angry articles that will appear inevitably in the Daily Telegraph about how Xi Jinping is personally orchestrating campaigns against the British Museum.
Yeah,
Because I can tell you, as night follows, they will come.
yeah, yeah. And it's also explained, right, why they hate this game, right? This black myth Wukong,
Yeah,
because it's all started, start all these, yeah.
yeah,
So so they can't just say it's a bad game, but instead they say, oh, it doesn't have a DEI, whatever. They keep on saying that, trying to dismiss the whole thing. Yeah,
yeah.
but I can understand that. Okay. All right. Okay, that's it for now. I mean, I can continue forever because there are other things, but we can continue next Wednesday. Okay.
Absolutely, and look forward to doing so, Sophia.
Yeah,
Oh,
I'm
before you go, one very quick question, which is TikTok. Is TikTok actually a presence in China? Is it part of Chinese
well, they
social
have
media within China?
there are two versions. There's TikTok and then there's Douyin, which is the Chinese version of it. And
Right.
uh the company trying to separate the two, they really do not want to give the US government any excuses to say, okay, this is the Chinese government, this and that.
Yeah.
So they actually separate the two very well. So you really cannot easily get access to TikTok. You can have Douyin, but TikTok itself, the overseas version is not available in China. So
Interesting.
that's
Okay.
there's a
Just
special. Chinese version for it. Yes.
Yeah, because a friend of mine asked me this.
Oh,
She's got two daughters who regularly post things on TikTok,
TikTok.
and she was
Yeah.
wondering whether some of them, they're perfectly normal things that young people do,
Yeah.
dancing and all that. So she's just wondering whether people in China can see them.
No,
I just
people
I just
don't. They
said I'd
see it.
ask. Yeah,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. But
okay.
she should post it in Douyin. I think you can see Douyin. I mean, there
I'm
are
sure you
ways you
can.
can get to Chinese
Of course
social
you can.
media to post things.
Of
Yeah.
course you can.
But
Of course you
yeah.
can.
Maybe it's gradually more people will discover them. We will see.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you,
Great.
Sophia.
Thank you. See you
Right.
next time.
Right.
Bye.
Right.